take Ajinkya Rani as your icon. I think he's a standing example of what a human being is all about. Ajinkya, great to have you with us, and we will hear him over the next 3 days, and I'll also catch up with you on cricket during one of the breaks. We have a lot to discuss. All right, ladies and gentlemen, the next topic is a very important topic that many conferences and summits don't touch upon. What does public health look like in the digital era? Many times this is omitted from many summits, but for us in Digital Healthcare Summit, this is top in priority. That's how we've shaped the agenda. We focus on subjects that matter, and this is of paramount importance. We moved from patients to examining a broken healthcare system, and now public health. We are becoming more connected, more wild, and increasingly digital, and so is public health. We have an amazing panel over here, and chairing this session is Ms. Viveka Roy Chowdhury, one of the most respected journalists in healthcare and editor-in-chief in Express Pharma, Express Healthcare, and Express Nutra, a good friend as well. Wearing 3 hats, she's the best to chair this session. Viveka, if you can come forward, please. Joining Viveka on this panel is Dr. Steve McFeely, who previously served with the WHO and is now Chief Statistician and Director of Data at OECD. Joining both of them is Professor T. Ho, who is an amazing, famous personality globally. You'll hear him later on in the post-lunch session on his keynote on public health and precision medicine. You don't want to miss that. Be on time post-lunch. Professor Dean Ho, if you can join us on the dais. Mrs. Manjari, you can come forward.
My list.
The FIP India Envoy and the veteran in pharmacy, here representing the pharmacist community. And last but not the least, Professor Anil Kaur, a leading authority on public health and Vice Chancellor of the Malla Reddy Vishwavidyapeeth. May now hand you over to Viveka, if we can take this session forward. And as I always request, if we can control the session for 45 minutes, we'll have some time, as in the last session, for Q&A as well. Over to you, Viveka. Thank you.
Thank you, and wonderful to have a public health session so early in a program of the 3 days, of a 3-day program. So that's Dr. Rajendra Prasad Gupta, who really knows how to put the important things on top. Also thanks to Dr. Gupta for giving us the media partnership, Express Healthcare and Express Pharma, the media partnership for these 3 days. I have a wonderful panel and just a few introductory messages on public health in India to put it into context. I often say that the difference between public health and private health in India is that public health is high touch and low tech. That has changed, and in private healthcare it's high tech and low touch. Let's hope that we can find a balance, and I can see that balance also is coming into that. So in India, the public health sector really came into its forte during the COVID pandemic, when vaccines were in the initial stages only available in the public through public health hospitals. So that's when we really realized the impact that public health could have on population health. I'd like to go quickly to my panel and ask for a quick introduction to the work that they do and how it connects to public health, and especially public health in the digital era. For instance, if we can move first to you, sir. You're with the OECD, Professor Steve, and the OECD is known for a very high level of data collection, and that data forms the basis for a lot of policies.
OH.
So how does that connect to public health and in the digital era?
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. So at the OECD, we pride ourselves in really focusing on good quality data to inform all of our policies and decisions. So a fundamental decision that we've made early on at the OECD is to prioritise the funding of statistics and data. So a lot of areas in international organisations rely on voluntary contributions, but at the OECD, the statistics and data department is actually very protected because it's seen as fundamental to everything else that happens. And I think that's a crucial point that should apply to everybody else, is if you want good data to inform your policies, you need to invest in those data and in the systems that produce those data. Too often we have a tendency to assume that those data will come for free, will come very inexpensively, but in fact they don't. So investment in statistics is a crucial point. Then moving to digitisation, I guess a key point I would like to make is we see a lot of focus now on digitisation, in particular on artificial intelligence. Again, at the OECD, we would stress that good data governance is a prerequisite to governance of artificial intelligence. And again, this is a point that's often overlooked. But if you don't sort out your data governance first, then everything else will fall apart afterwards, because artificial intelligence relies solely on data. And I think these are two crucial points that I would emphasize at this point.
So just picking up on what you said, that we have to invest in data, and there are many resource scarce countries where you have to stretch the dollar or the rupee in the case of India. So can you give us one example of how a good investment in data collection and taking out data insights really helped make an impact on healthcare and public health? Especially during the COVID pandemic, we did see that. But any other work that you've already done on that we were speaking about just before this panel discussion, where you said that you often talk about that?
Yeah, so many resource-constrained countries, I think, are under huge pressure, both nationally but also internationally. So I would say, first of all, we will encourage countries to focus on their own national and regional priorities and not get confused by donor-driven international priorities, because I think sometimes that's a distraction. And secondly, we've really worked with and encouraged countries to focus on their data infrastructure. Good data infrastructure will not happen by accident. It requires deliberate decisions, deliberate infrastructural decisions, and architectural decisions. Too often, I think governments don't understand soft infrastructure. They will implicitly understand the costs and the challenges involved with hard infrastructure, but digital infrastructure is something they seem to struggle with, because data, just like gas or oil, needs to be sourced, it needs to be cleaned, stored, it needs to be protected, and it needs to be disseminated. And all of those elements require pipelines and infrastructure, just like gas or oil. But governments don't understand that, and I think one of the successes we're slowly having is helping governments to understand in a digital era they need to invest in the data infrastructure. And crucially, what that means is putting legislation in place first to deal with things like statistical legislation, data protection, freedom of information, and then also putting in infrastructure which involves things like classifications, unique identifiers, codification systems that allow the data to move, and finally explaining to governments that often they misdiagnose data issues as IT problems. IT will only fix your data once the data are clean, but ICT or digitalization cannot fix fundamental problems in data if the data themselves are rubbish.
Thank you, Professor Steve, for making that point. If it's garbage in, it's garbage out, in terms of data. And I think we have to deal with a lot of privacy issues, data privacy issues. Where does an individual's privacy, right does the public health consequence take over? Thank you for those points. Professor, moving to my next panelist, Professor Ho, Dr. Ho. You come with a lot of, you're a physician as well as you've moved into the IT space. Can you tell us a little bit of the platforms that you and your team have innovated and how the impact on health that has had?
Yes, first of all, good afternoon to everybody. Thank you for being here and thank you for having me. We developed a few platforms, one of which is called Identify, to do two things. One is to we're gonna play musical chairs here. So Curate.ai is used to dynamically adjust doses for patients, and Identify is used to design combination therapy. And I think both are busy spaces. But I want to mention, since we're talking in a public health session, that the way we design our platforms, we do it in a non-chronological way. What does that mean? I think we view the technology development part actually as a very small segment of bringing innovation to people. And so I think the best illustration of that is the very first person that we hired into our institute actually comes from insurance, comes from reimbursement. Because in the end, we know that in order for a solution to scale, for it to impact, for us to even know what impact or value means, we need to bring in people that know that value. And so we actually co-created and co-designed not only the solution, but the workflows that allowed us to actually help people. I want to be very clear, our platforms don't follow a garbage in, garbage out framework, in the sense that we do not use population data to train an algorithm to then treat the next person that walks in the door. Instead, we use only a person's own data to manage only their own care dynamically, because we change over time. In order to build those frameworks, we actually prospectively collect extraordinarily small amounts of data, and we use that data to treat each person in a precision or personalized way where we define personalization or precision as a dynamic process. I think everybody in the room is widely familiar with the term precision and personalized medicine. Now you throw AI into it. I think one of the greatest missed opportunities we have if we don't collect data the right way is to ensure that we recognize that the best dose for a patient on a Monday can be very different for that same patient the following Monday, or even a few hours later, or even a few minutes later. And so when we forget to treat people as dynamic subjects, and we don't design workflows that allow us to collect the right data to empower those frameworks, truly a missed opportunity. So to sum up, Curate is for dosing, Identify is for combination design, but I think the beauty of the technology is actually in the workflow, because those workflows were designed all the way downstream with patient, caregiver, payer, health economist, implementation scientist, doctor, nurse, pharmacist, allied health, the whole workflow in consideration.
Thank you. Could you also let us know on the data privacy part of it, because we just had that question.
Another thing that we're interested in is when you look at the privacy of the data, we don't use genomics. It's a very important space. We work very closely with the genome-guided medicine community, but some of the data that we need involves, for example, different doses that a patient has received, and then some sort of biomarker of their response. We actually don't use any demographics at all on the patient. And we argue that, overemphasizing that type of data is where the bias and the de-anonymization security challenges happen. And so when you're dealing with dynamics, we don't need a lot of the data you think we need, but we do need a little bit more data from each person in terms of how they evolve over time. But that type of data that we use implicitly is not data that can straightforwardly de-identify. That was another component that we embedded into our workflow.
Thank you, President. I think we'll come back to all panelists for their policy suggestions in the next round. Moving now to Dr. Manjari. And I know that since morning we've not talked about the kind of people and the kind of courses you talk. So you're as the only pharmacist on the panel, and I think the first pharmacist to speak at this conference this year. Can you tell us about your work and the important role of a pharmacist? And I know you've spoken about the pharmacist being the center and the harbinger of public health. Please tell us about your work.
Yes, thank you. Am I audible? Yes. So thank you, Viveka. And as you said, I want to profusely thank the organizers, Rajendra ji and his team, for including pharmacists on the panel and making the entry of the pharmacist in this digital health summit. So when we talk about the pharmacist, and before that I want to tell you that I'm representing International Pharmaceutical Federation, which is globally called as FIP, way back established in 1912 in The Hague, Netherlands. FIP represents more than 4 million pharmacists, pharmaceutical educators, and pharmaceutical scientists. FIP is in official relationship with WHO, and it has very strong relationship with other professionals like World Medical Association, International Council of Nurses, and the World Physiotherapist Association and the Dental Associations. Now, when we talk about the pharmacists have been classified as by WHO as well as by OECD as healthcare professionals who are trained to dispense medicines and support the safe use of medicine and support the public health. In India, there are more than 8 lakh pharmacists. When I say pharmacist, I'm talking about the community pharmacists who are called in India as chemists, who are called as medical shop owners. And there are more than 8 lakh chemist shops across India in every nook and corner of the country. Right now, when you visit the pharmacy shop, when you visit the chemist shop, the patient goes and asks for the medicine by showing the prescription or without prescription. The medicines, but they are giving medication counseling, they are doing the drug use review, they are a friend to the patient, and they are part of they have strengthened, their role is such that they have strengthened the primary healthcare system in many countries. So for universal health access, universal health coverage, pharmacists have a very important role, and that's what globally we see. Now when we look into India, our pharmacist role is still weak, it is still developing, it is still evolving, and pharmacists are not to be blamed for that. So it is from education to regulation, everything is to be blamed right now if we want to do the blame game. So the pharmacists in India are still considered as traders or the shopkeepers than the healthcare professionals. But when you look in India, the health scenario, we have an aging population, we have NCD burden, the non-communicable diseases, which are rising even from the younger population. We have very poor health literacy. We're talking about the patients, we're talking about the consumers, and there is very poor health literacy. And there is irrational use of medicine, which is very rampant. So in this scenario, the pharmacist's role becomes actually very important in the public health delivery. But somehow the pharmacists have remained a missing link in the public health system of our country. So when you see that, and when you see the efforts taken by different organizations like Indian Pharmaceutical Association, FIP, Pharmacy Council, EDCOP, in improving the status of the pharmacists, we have a lot of positive examples. You said you talk about your work, so briefly I can just give you one example. We involved the pharmacist in the National TB Control Program. and the pharmacists became DOT providers. They became drug providers. So patients were getting free of charge anti-TB medicines from the government, and then they were getting right counseling, adherence monitoring, everything. Pharmacists were also doing the community awareness about the TB. You know, India leads in tuberculosis, and that's why this effort was taken to create the PPM. And pharmacists did wonderful job. That means when you empower the pharmacists, when you train them well, when you create the right ecosystem, pharmacists deliver the public health actions. They are right there. Another project, very successful project done by EDCO, All India Drug Control Officers Confederation, that was known as Project Concern. And there pharmacists were trained for the NCDs like diabetes, hypertension, and there were a lot of positive outcomes. That under project, whosoever were the patients, out of them, 70 to 80% had better glycemic control and better control over blood pressure than the other people. So there are a lot of positive outcomes and very encouraging results when pharmacists are involved in public health actions. And this should be across the country. This should spread across the country. So investing in pharmacists is very important for healthier communities. Thank you.
Dr. Manjari, what is the role of pharmacists as we see more and more online pharmacy picking up? The role of the nukkad or the corner pharmacist and chemist is changing. And when you order your medicines online, you have a faceless person calling you up to verify your prescription. And so what is the role? Do you feel that role is diminishing, and how do we bring that back, and how do we make the pharmacist actually the gatekeeper for public health programs like TB and God forbid another COVID comes away, another pandemic comes around.
Right. So very rightly asked, we all know that we are in the digital health era, that's why we are here. And the online pharmacies have become quite common, even though legally they are not yet approved, or there is no set of legal standards exclusively for the online pharmacies. But everybody wants to order online, and so the medicines have not become an exception, and we have to accept that. But even in this era, so there are invisible pharmacies. But even then, I can say that there are more than 8 lakh chemist shops everywhere. They are deeply rooted in the community. And we want to save the role of the pharmacist, whether in offline or online era. And the pharmacist can play a very important role for the community. Just take an example of a common ailment. There is a sore throat, there is hyperacidity, there is pain. The pharmacies are the people, are the first point of contact for any person with any symptoms. So pharmacists should be trained, should be empowered to handle a set of conditions like common ailments, minor ailments which were called earlier, that can enable the person for responsible self-care, that will also reduce the burden of the health system. Now in the morning, Mr. Ganeshan had an example of Char Dham Yatra where his elder brother was unwell, and they happened to visit the medical shop because that was the only setting which was nearer to healthcare as well. So the pharmacies are ubiquitously present. Even in the rural area, pharmacists are more than doctors, and they can deliver a lot. So pharmacists need to be trained. Now, if that pharmacist, if he was present in the shop, that is also one question, the regulatory aspect. If the pharmacist was there and if he was well trained for CPR, for handling the emergency situations, exactly, the pharmacist would have trained his brother right there, maybe with Sorbitrate or maybe with CPR or maybe with some other services, and the life would have been same. So pharmacists have an enormous role, even though there is online pharmacists coming, digital health tools are there. The role of the pharmacist and his bonding and binding with the patient, which really matters. So that needs to be strengthened with right education, continuous professional development programs, so capacity building, upscaling, all that has to be done so that the pharmacist can be engaged in all public health programs and they can be empowered to deliver the care for minor ailment or for NCDs or for many other requirements like de-addiction services and so on. So pharmacists should be looked upon as an important pillar of the healthcare system. COVID has demonstrated that only pharmacy shops were open during the first phase of the pandemic and nobody else was. And so the pharmacists have demonstrated their role, and now it is up to the government, it is up to the policymakers to take it up and strengthen their role so that our primary healthcare system becomes a very strong system. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Moji. Professor Kaur, thank you for your patience through this round. Coming to you, you're a physician dentist with more than 35 years of experience, both in operational and translational research, especially focusing on emerging and re-emerging infectious diseases. One of the recommendations of the 2024 One Health in India report was to incorporate more research and data into the One Health initiative of India to drive more data-driven decision making. So how can we take this forward, and can you give us some examples of the work that you do connecting public health and bringing public health into the digital era?
Thank you very much. I think we appreciate the organizers for putting public health panel together, particularly at this forum. I think as a clinician, we tend to take one patient at one time. But as a public health professional, we try to prevent a patient from becoming a patient. So from that aspect, I think digital health is very important. I think we have to focus on also prevention. Having said that, I think you mentioned about One Health. I think One Health, particularly in India, the concept emerged after the One Health mission was launched in 2022. And I think right now there are almost 14 ministries involved in it. The data is missing, to be very honest about it. I've been in India only for the last 1 year. After spending over 35 years in the US. The data is, if at all there is data, it is in silos. I think what is needed is to bring everything on one platform. I think without that, we cannot do anything. I think one of the missions of One Health mission was actually to prepare for future pandemics, emerging infections. Unfortunately, that is not
Possible without the data. It's not possible without the data.
Absolutely. So what we are trying to do is using the secondary data, which for the pharmacies, what are their sales? We try to capture that, insurance claims data. So we try to do that. But I think we need primary data. Without primary data, we cannot proceed. In US, we had electronic medical records. We could sort of bring that out and prepare something like a surveillance dashboard. Here we are still struggling. I think without data, nothing can move forward. So therefore, I think digital health is very important for public health perspective. The other challenge we face is antibiotics. For example, AMR, antibiotic resistance, is a huge challenge. Public health, we face the challenge primarily because the dispensing of antibiotics is mostly without prescriptions. That is one challenge. The second challenge is more antibiotics are being used in the animal world, in the veterinary sciences, than in human world. So that is again a huge challenge. So I think we need a single One Health approach where we can collect all the data from all the sources like animals, humans, even environment. India has started some sentinel surveillance methods, sewage collection or environmental collection. But we need much progress. The other good thing that has happened
They're not
is
okay.
we have set up these BSL